Hi, this is Emma, and welcome to the first official episode of SAX BITES, the 5-minute saxophone lesson podcast. I'm starting my first 5 episodes with something I'm calling my SAX Basics series. This might be a little bit too rudimentary for more experienced players, but at the same time, you never stop needing to work on the basics. So I'm going to be covering some really key topics in 5 minutes and leaving you each episode with some ideas and a few kind of takeaway points that I want you to take into your practice at home. So today's lesson is all about air, and honestly, I can't imagine myself starting this podcast talking about anything else except for air. I feel like all I say as a teacher is more air, more air. So I really want you to think about 1, if you're hearing that from your teacher, or 2, if you're saying that to yourself when you're playing or listening back to your playing. One thing I remind myself about frequently when it comes to air is that the air is the sound, not the instrument, not me, it's the air, okay? So when I'm playing and when I'm producing my best quality sound, I'm really capitalizing on both the quantity of air I'm using and also the speed of the air that I'm using. So a lot of students that I see that are having tone problems or intonation problems, it usually comes down to one of those two. Quite often, little young students, they'll have the quantity down pat. They'll be pumping out air through their instrument and playing really loudly, but they don't often have the speed right. So what you want to kind of do with that one is you want to sit down with your instrument, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to recommend long tones. And I hate long tones. Long tones are boring. I don't deny that. But practicing long tones gives you the opportunity to do some self-reflection. So I feel so cliche starting a podcast talking about air and recommending long tones, but that's really where we want to start. And I'm going to be uploading some little exercises that match each episode, so little long tone exercises, to my website each time I drop an episode. So keep an eye out for my long tone exercises there. But until you get that, start by focusing on the middle of your register, going for a full breath, and record yourself to listen to what happens to your sound throughout the length of that breath. So are you losing pitch or are you losing quality towards the end of your breath? And analyze what you're hearing. Once you've given that activity a go, I want you to experiment with singing and playing. I think that singing is one of the most underrated activities we can do to improve our timbre and our use of air and that's effect on timbre. So one thing you can do is, just sing on its own, but more effective is actually to incorporate some humming and singing into your long tone routine. It helps with your pitch and your intonation, but it also gets you feeling what different amounts of air actually feels like coming through your body, coming out of you. So you can try different activities like singing a note and then holding it the same pitch on your instrument. You can try playing then singing. You can try singing simple melodies and then playing those melodies, but having that connection to what does my air feel like when I'm singing loudly, singing soft, singing bright, singing with a darker tone, and how can I emulate that on my saxophone is just, one of the most really underrated activities. It's a great one to get young students who, they might not want to sing. Start really young, show them yourself, and then in your own practice, incorporate it. I love it because it's kind of like, if you've ever read Atomic Habits and they talk about habit stacking, well, it's kind of like technique stacking on the saxophone. Not only are you working on your air and your sound and your quality of sound, but you're working on your intonation and your listening skills, and it's all packed in there on top of each other. Okay, guys, we're coming up to the 5-minute mark, and I can already tell you that I am going to absolutely struggle with the time limit I've given myself. These topics are huge, but the Sax Bites way is going to be providing you with some quick little tips and some thoughts that you can immediately put into practice. So today's episode has given you 2 different long tone activities to try to improve your use of air and to get you thinking more about air. And if you want to keep the conversation going, please join me on socials. I'll see you there. Bye.